Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Space Club Career Chats. I'm so excited to be kicking this off for the fall 2022 season of Space Club. I know many of the schools out there have already started doing their mission to Moon or mission to Mars. And so, good luck. I can't wait to see all of the things that you guys are creating. And also, thank you for submitting for our career chat guest. So, today's the first one. We're going to be kicking it off for this semester. Before I introduce her and bring her on, I do want to share with you our new Space Club website. So, if you're watching this and you're like, I want to submit a question, I'm going to show you how to do that. So, the website is stemspaceclub.com. And if you go to career chats, you can submit a question for our upcoming guest. So today we are talking to Maria Garza. She is a neuroscientist. And then next month, we're going to be talking to Lindsay Fuller, who is an astrophysicist. So make sure you submit a question for her, and you might be featured in one of these career chats. The other thing we're going to do at the end, and a lot of you are probably watching for this part, is the raffle. So if you're in Space Club, you can go to the student portal and you can submit your design for Moon or Mars. So if you're working on that robotic arm or mission patch or plants in space, you just upload a picture or a video of your design. You will get entered into the raffle, which we do every time we host one of these career chats. Okay, but now let's get to our guest. That's why everybody's here. So we have Maria Garza. She is in San Antonio, and she has a degree in biology from the University of Incarnate Word and a master's in biology from the University of Texas at San Antonio. So she's very passionate about studying the brain. She's going to talk about research that she's done on blind mice and how they navigated compared to seeing mice. And she's actually in between jobs, and she's trying to figure out her next path in her career. And I'm really excited about that, to talk about how she's figuring out what her next steps are. Her goal is to aid in drug and biotech development. So let me bring her on. Hey, Maria, welcome.
Hi, Natasha. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here as our first guest. Did you know you were first?
I actually did it. I did know that everyone was asking lots of questions, though, so that's exciting.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and just jump right in. So I love to start with the pathway, like your journey to where you are now. And so I mentioned you've studied neuroscience, done a little bit of research, but what made you want to learn about the brain?
I wanted to learn about the brain because I saw it as this big mystery. Um, can you just like try to wrap your mind around the idea of studying your own brain? Like it kind of, if you think about it too long, it'll
Wild.
freak you out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't go too far down the rabbit hole. But I thought it was just so fascinating, and that um, there's still so much that we didn't really understand about it. The more that I would read, the more that I got exposed to neuroscience, I understood that, oh wow, like we really still don't know that much. And but I guess the thing that got me started thinking about it was a class that I took during my senior year of undergraduate at Incarnate Word. It was a elective course called neuroplasticity. And during that class, we read this book. There's a picture of it on the slide there, The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Deutsch. And during the reading this book, it, by the way, it's about a bunch of clinical trials about patients who have suffered strokes, and how miraculously the brain recovered, and that it was just defying what everyone thought the brain was. Everyone thought it was a machine made of neurons, and that when neurons die, that's it. I mean, how many times have you heard people tell you, oh, don't hit your head, you'll kill your neurons and you're
Yeah.
going to get dumber or something like that, right?
Right.
And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, my neurons. But the reality is that no, the brain is plastic. It can adapt, and it can overcome some crazy things, like people in these stories having severe strokes that would take out a quarter of their brain matter even, and that they would still be able to recover abilities like speech, learning, things like that somehow, even though the brain areas that were thought to be implicated in those abilities were severely damaged. And it just made everything seem so much cooler, right? Like, oh man, like we really don't know what's going on. Like, how is it
Yeah.
doing this? It's alive.
Okay. That is so cool. All right, so then you're fascinated about the brain, but then why okay, now you're like, "I'm gonna study neuroscience." What made you pick that path?
So this was tricky, right? Because while I was getting those revelations, I was also trying to find what career I wanted to do. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is that they maybe identify things that they're interested in, but they don't know what to do with them. How am I going to make money doing what I love? Things like that. Because when I started in college, I had no idea that I even had an affinity for science. I actually thought that I was going to get into politics,
Oh.
which no, it didn't work
No.
out for me. But that's kind of the beauty of the college experience, though, is that you're required to take a bunch of different courses that are maybe outside of what you thought you were interested in. Like they call them the general courses that everyone has to take, right? So along the way, I had to take biology classes. I had to take science courses, and I found out that I had a real affinity for them. I loved learning. I loved the scientific process, the labs, like all that stuff was really fun for me. So I started to see gradually like, oh, I'm not a politician, I'm not a journalist, all the things that were going through my head. I'm a scientist. I think like a
Mm,
scientist. So narrowing in on that was really important. And then also what I was exposed to. So like I said, that class that I took on neuroplasticity, that got my little gears going, like, okay, I like the brain. The brain is cool. I also had other things, right? Genetics, oh, super cool. Cell biology, all this stuff. But it really it all just kind of kept pointing to the brain for me. And what kind of sealed the deal for me was I took a free course on Coursera. It's an online site where you can take free college courses.
mm,
So if you don't know what you like, go try something. You never know. So I took this course in medical neuroscience, taught by Dr. White out of where was he from? Duke University, I believe. And that class, yes, I need to study neuroscience because it wasn't actually about discoveries in neuroscience, that class. It was actually about diagnosing
mm.
medical disorders that were related to the nervous system. So it was about like, oh, well, if your patient has these symptoms, what do they have? Also, a little bit of background into how neurons worked and things like that. But the emphasis was more medical. But because I was like, well, why is this happening? How is this happening? How is it working? That's why I got turned on to neuroscience research. So very
Yeah.
roundabout pathway, but that I got to what I love, so that's what's important.
Yeah, it's like you just have to keep going, right? And keep asking questions and keep searching and trying new things, and then you'll be surprised on the it's like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
It was taking this
Exactly.
class that just, like, triggered all these questions and ignited that spark, and I love that. And so one student here from Alabama was asking, how long does it take? So you decided to do this, which your degree's in biology, right? So
Correct.
how long is that process of a bachelor's and master's?
Right. Okay. So a bachelor's typically takes about 4 years, and then a master's degree is 2 years. What's interesting is to get into a master's degree program, you don't necessarily need a bachelor's in neuroscience. You can get a bachelor's, like I did, in biology. So you can kind of narrow in your focus the further you get into it. Biology degrees, like bachelor degrees, are very general. So you end up taking classes in everything. I mean, I took classes in ecology,
Mm,
things like that that I didn't end up having a real interest in. But again, it was that exposure, seeing like, okay, that's not what I like. This is what I like. You can kind of narrow it
it's
in
like
and get more
start broad.
specialized.
Yeah.
Exactly. hmm So
All
then
right.
once
So
you get into a master's program, you get to even get more focused
and then
because
you
you
keep
figure
going if you want, right? And
out.
then you get the
Yeah.
PhD and it's like even more narrow.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So now let's talk about some of the work you've done in this field. Um, but let's start with what is a neuroscientist?
Okay. So a neuroscientist is one who studies neuroscience. So someone who studies the different nervous systems. So we have two, right? The central and the peripheral. Most people, when you think of neuroscientists, you think of, oh, central, you're going to study the brain. But there are people out there who study peripheral nervous systems and people like who study taste, for example. They're not considered like brain because they focus more on the nerves in
Okay.
our tongue and in our gut, things like that. But yeah, so there's still even within the term neuroscientist, there's a very wide range of things that you can study, and it really I it speaks to just how much we still have to learn, right? Because I don't believe anyone in the world can say I'm an expert neuroscientist,
Mm.
period, right? Because you become an expert in a very specific idea or a very specific region or a very specific cell type. So like there's so much to get into in the world of neuroscience. So yeah, it's hard to just say what is a neuroscientist because you end
It's
up
just so
doing
broad.
studying so many different things, using so many different techniques. It's just yeah, it's a huge realm. But overall, you study nerves.
Got it. Okay, well then the research example you gave us was about mice. So how can you tell us a little bit about that experiment, but also like how is that related to neuroscience?
Sure. So something that the brain does that's very important is that it learns and it keeps memories. And you can think, well, how do you even study that? Well, you have to find models to study how that happens. And there's some things that you can't do in people that is more ethical, that is ethical
Mhm.
to do in animals, right? So using animal models is really valuable because we can check different things in terms of if animals are able to learn and remember things. So something that I worked on was it was a combination of vision experiments and then also navigation. So typically people don't combine those. We think of like, oh, you're gonna study vision or you're gonna study navigation, but I was able to do this combination experiment. And what I wanted to understand was basically how do blind mice navigate? Because sighted mice, you would think, oh, well, they probably were relying on their eyesight to some degree. Now, mice don't have the greatest vision to begin with, but they do use it. They need it. So, what's the difference if they don't have vision? So, what I did was I combined a Pavlovian experiment with a reorientation task. So, if anyone's ever heard of Pavlov and his dogs, you know that you can train animals to do a behavior in return for a food reward. So I trained mice to dig to find a food reward in a
Hmm.
location that they could find if they understood geometry. So if they understood their arena. So these mice were in a rectangle, and the reward was always in a cup on the right side of a short wall. So they had to learn that rule, right? Like if I dig in the cup that's on the right side of a short wall, the rectangle, I'll find a
Mhm.
reward 50% of the time, right? Because the rectangle has two symmetrical right sides. So if the mouse learns the task, it will get it correct. It will dig in the correct cup 50% of the time because half of it will be going
Right,
to the
right.
correct right. If it doesn't learn, then it'll be 25, 25, 25, 25.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we did is we trained sighted mice to do that. We saw how fast it took them to learn on average, and we compared them to blind mice. And we found that blind mice could learn the task, even though they couldn't see the length of the walls. So we wanted to know how are they understanding this? It did take them a day longer. I think it took our sighted mice 3 days to learn. It took our blind mice four.
Hmm.
What we found was that it has to do with the area the mice walk on. So it's their haptic perception, their ability to touch the boundaries and edges. That's what they use to learn how to navigate because geometry is really important for navigating. We can talk about, oh, you can use landmarks to navigate in the real world, but a lot of people just think of, oh, go left, then right, then left, then right. So it was really interesting to come up with this answer and to be able to
Yeah.
publish it and everything.
That is awesome. And you had shared some links. I think it was the study, right? And so if
Yeah.
any students are interested in learning more, I'll have it in the comments below and they can like learn more about this. And if what she's sharing is interesting to you, maybe you should consider a pathway in biology or neuroscience. Okay, I'm gonna hit you with this question that I thought was interesting. I'm just gonna ask it. Is it possible to insert memory chips in human bodies that can connect to the nervous system and transmit data through the ionic movement so that all memories get stored in the memory chips and we do not forget any moment of our life? And Arav wants to know this because they don't want to have to study very much for test. So they just want to
Oh.
like input the information. So that was the basis of that question.
That is awesome. Props to this kid. Um, I can pretty much guarantee at this point you're gonna have to study for all your tests through
Ah,
whatever grade you're in right now, and into high school and into college, because we're just not there yet. The fact is, we don't even know for certain that electrical activity within the brain is responsible for memories. We don't even know it for certain. We believe that it's really important. We see that when we interrupt signals in different places, that it alters how people behave, how animals, people, monkeys, whatever, how they behave, how they learn. But we don't understand how it all comes together. It's really
mm,
cool. There are a lot of interesting documentaries out there. I actually saw one not that long ago that talked about this a little bit, and it was more concerned about like bionic limbs, things like that. So simple reflex mechanisms we can imitate with machines. That's why we're able to have robotic limbs, things like that. But something as complex as a memory, we are not even close to understanding how those are made and coded and kept. We have ideas, but to be able to copy and keep it in some sort of external drive, we're not close.
right.
We're
Yeah,
not
I'm
there
thinking
yet.
like some filing cabinet for the brain where you just like sort it.
I
Oh,
mean, I would
funny.
love to be alive to to see that happen, but I don't think I will be.
Just like upload everything I need to know for this test.
It'd be so fun.
Someday. All right. Well, now let's switch to your life outside of science. You mentioned crocheting. I got so many questions on this. So they want to know, what do you like to crochet? And I think you have
Oh,
props.
I have props. I love crocheting everything. I have the ones that I have in my picture there. So these are how big they are. These are called amigurumi. They're really fun to make. It's a Japanese art of s- crocheting and stuffing little characters and animals. So this is a
How
lot of
cool.
fun. I really love this little cow. And I also have my little carrot.
His hair.
I have one. I have one under construction right now. I don't know if has anyone
Ooh,
seen Star versus the Forces of Evil, that Disney show. It's really awesome. I'm
I have
working on
not.
Star. So she doesn't have hair yet. She's gonna have hair. She's not done yet, but I'm working on
That is, let's get a
her.
closer look. That's so good. Oh my
she
gosh, they're
doesn't
gonna love
she
that.
doesn't have her mouth yet either,
Yeah,
but we're
yeah.
getting there.
How long does
she
a project like that take?
It depends. So, like, this little Pokeball took me, like, maybe an hour, so this was really easy to do. Something like this takes a little bit longer because there's a lot of parts you have to attach and switching colors and stuff. So this is probably, like, I don't know, how many hours would you take? Maybe 10-ish hours. And this is another thing, though, this is a hobby for me, so keeping track of the time is not something I'm really doing. But, yeah, it
Just
does take a little
enjoying.
while.
Well,
So I
you
love
have
the
a
amigurumi.
fan. You have a fan in the comments because Emily, who's on the Vivify team, she's like, "Yes, we've watched all of Stars."
Oh,
So,
good. Yeah, I love that show.
okay, and then what is your favorite book to read?
Oh, I saw that and I was dreading having to answer this because it's so
Oh.
hard to say one book. Um, I did mention that I love the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Lee Bardugo. There we go. But saying which book is my favorite is really difficult. I think right now I would say it's the third book of that series. It's called Rune and Rising. That's probably my favorite so far. But I mean, it changes all the time. I'll read something else and
Oh
be
yeah.
like, no, this is my favorite now.
What mood
But
you're in, yeah.
but yeah, lately I've been really on a fantasy kick. So a lot of like those kind of things. I love the books by V.E. Schwab, the Darker Shade of Magic series. That stuff's also really good.
That sounds
But yeah, I
awesome.
love reading.
Okay, and then the last question for this one, which I love this is coming from a group of 6th and 8th graders. They wanna know what is harder, being a scientist or a mom? And you have 2 boys, so what's harder?
You guys are funny. Why are you worrying about this right now? Um, well, the way I like to think about it is that being a mom and being a neuroscientist, they kind of require different energies, right?
Ooh.
Being a neuroscientist, you really need to have a lot of inward energy. You have to study, you have to read, you have to look at data, come up with experiments, conclusions, predictions. It's very like it's mental work. But being a mom is very like physically exerted. Like, I have to be present. I have to be engaged. I have to, you want to be just like fully present and active with your kids. And I found that for me personally, like inward energy comes a lot easier to me. Like I can sit and read and do data and everything for hours, hours, and hours. It comes really easily to me. But being a mom and being that like physically present and engaged, it's more taxing.
Yeah.
So for me, it's easier to be a neuroscientist, but I still love
That's a really good answer. I love
being
that. That's great. Okay, so the last part here is called rapid fire. So I'm gonna give you like 10 seconds for this. So you're gonna get like a real short couple sentence answer for each of these. So I'm sorry, but
a mom.
you'll be
Okay,
great. You ready?
let's do it.
What is the weirdest thing that you've discovered about the brain or
It's a
learned about the
mess.
brain? It's
It's
a
a
mess.
mess. It's a mess.
Great
The
answer.
the the connections and stuff, we can't figure it out. It's a mess.
Love it. What are the side effects? Oh, it's a space question. What are the side
Ugh.
effects on the brain from being in space for a long time?
So you don't have gravity pulling your fluids down. So when you're outside of gravity, the fluids can go whatever, and you can get a lot of pressure built up in your skull. So you can actually get brain damage from being in outer
Oh,
space for too
from
long.
just being in space.
Yep.
Hmm, cool. Not cool, but
I'm doing
interesting.
good with time.
You are. You're doing great. Does the brain ever get too big for the skull?
It can. That's actually a condition that's really dangerous because you can end up getting paralyzed because the tissue can get compressed around the spinal cord. They actually call it a Chiari malformation, and to relieve it, you have to enlarge the base of the skull to accommodate the brain.
Oh.
So yeah, it's pretty scary. I think it's caused by like a mutation in when the brain tissue is developing. So yes, it
Hmm.
can happen. It's scary.
What do you
Yeah.
enjoy most about studying the brain?
Discovery. When I figure things out. The whole process is fun, right? Coming up with predictions and experiments and everything, but when you actually find something and you get the payoff, that's
Mm,
the best.
that's awesome. Okay, and have you ever felt a real brain? Please describe.
You weirdos. Okay, so a real brain is super squishy and sticky, and they always
Oh.
smell because we have to use all these crazy chemicals to get them clean and to fix the tissue so you can actually do stuff with it. Because if you don't, you can't touch it. It will just like it will stick to whatever you
Mm.
touch and just pull
Oh.
apart. Yeah,
Hmm.
real brains are pretty gross.
I kind of want to touch one now. That's cool. Awesome. You did great. You did awesome job with
Yeah.
those rapid fire. So we're going to switch here for a second on Space Club highlights. So the questions that you just got, we also have other submissions from kids that are in this program called Space Club. And I want to share with you some of the work that they've been doing. So here's some kids that are on the mission to moon, and they've been building these robotic hands. So here's an anatomy project where they're trying to like mimic how a hand works, and then classic roller coaster design challenge. It's pretty cool, right?
Those look really good. I wonder how much they can hold in the robotic hands.
That's a good question. We usually just have them pick up like paper or ping pong ball. I haven't done like a basketball or anything. So you're
To
like,
push it
let's
to the
test it.
limit.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I like that. So now we have another group here, Moon. They have these little rovers that they're building. So they use a
Oh,
vibrating motor to like move a rock sample. This really random one in the middle is a video Meet Their Crew. So they had a very creative way
oh,
of introducing their team. And these are mission patches. And this is cool because they did a 3D model. I have not seen that yet. So shout out to
oh, that's
Lockhart
cool.
Junior High.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say
So it's
that
like
looks like
on,
something you could 3D print. Yeah, that's
yeah, I
awesome.
think they did on like Tinkercad. So it's like this, yeah, 3D software. And then we have more robotic hands. You can see the ping pong ball. We're
Oh,
going
there you
more for
go.
like working versus like
Strength.
just Yeah, strength,
Dexterity. That's good.
dexterity. Yeah, so y'all have been doing great, and I know a lot of, clubs are just now getting started, so I'm really excited to see what else gets, created. But for everybody who submitted, now we have a raffle. So Maria, this is a part that they've been waiting for. And to make it related to you, you actually wrote a blog post. It's called A Neuroscientist's Top 5 STEM Activities for Kids and Families. And we'll link it down below if anybody wants to read it. She has some really great ideas if you're excited about this type of science to do at home with your parents. But we're going to give away one of the things that was in your blog post. So, can you tell us about this emberry?
Sure, the M-berry is actually a cool little experiment if you're interested in how taste works. So these little tablets, they contain a protein. It's called miraculin, uh, and it's really interesting because when you take the tablet, the miraculin protein will bind to your sweet taste receptors. So everyone knows the diagram of the tongue, right? And how there's a lot of sweet taste receptors in the front, sour, bitter, etc. So when you bind a protein to the sweet receptors on your tongue, it'll activate your gustatory and taste nerve endings so that you end up tasting sweet. So no matter what you eat or drink after having one of these berry tablets, it will all taste sweet because your
What?
sweet taste receptors are active. I don't know how long it lasts. I think it's like 30 minutes or something like that. But
No
it's a cool
way.
experiment if you really want to like trick your brain into thinking something is sweet when it's not.
So, is this how like I can get my kids to eat broccoli?
If they eat it really fast.
Like right after
you
taking it.
you cannot be dawdling at the
This is
table.
so cool. And it's like a great way to do a science experiment, right? To have people
Mhm.
like test it and see how long maybe it lasts.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. So everybody, so whenever we do this raffle, it's for a team. So everyone on the team is going to get this M-berry, as well as, since we're doing science here, a really cool USB microscope. So you can plug it into your Chromebook, laptop, whatever you have, and it just go look at stuff like bugs or hair, or I've looked at like my shirt fabric, like the fibers. You just go and explore. This is a bee, I think, that they're looking at here. So everybody who wins the raffle will get one of these. So let's see who our winners are. So we're going to go to this little fun thing called Picker Wheel, and I'm going to make it full screen. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm
All right, let's spin this wheel. Good luck, everybody. It's dramatic.
ready.
Hey, congratulations to Bot Hills. It is a 3-person team: Will, Zoe, and Serinket. Congrats. You are each getting that M-berry and your own USB microscope.
Super
Awesome.
cool.
Okay, so to end our career chat for today, Maria, thank you so much for joining us. I love like your passion and excitement for the brain. It is honestly a topic I don't think much about, which is kind of funny. But like, because we always use the brain. We are a brain. To think about how we study our own brain is like mind bending. So I just love that you shared, some of your story and your passion. Do you have any final thoughts, words that you want to share with all the students watching?
Yeah, sure. So I think what you could probably take away from my story, right, is that life is just it's a process of discovery, and the most interesting things that I think that have happened in my life have been when I've come to those moments of self-discovery. I mean, just being able to learn more about what I like and what really like you said, makes me very passionate. And it took me a long time to get there. I went through my whole undergraduate before I really like nailed it down in my senior year. And even then I was still kind of, I don't know. That's why I took that course online. So be patient with it. If you don't know what you want to do right now, it's okay. I mean, most of you probably are kids. So just absorb it. Be aware of what's around you and what people are saying, because you never know what will be that thing that just sticks there and you can't get it out, because that'll be the thing that drives you towards what your passion is. And don't give up either. Don't settle for things that aren't making you
Mhm.
happy. I mean, you might get in a position where you're doing something where you're not super happy about it, but don't let yourself be mentally stuck. Keep
Mm.
exploring, keep looking.
And what's your next step? What are you thinking to do next?
Yeah. So I one of those things that really makes me passionate is California. It's beautiful. That's where my
Oh,
family goes. We visit there all the time, and we've been sitting around for years saying, "Oh, I wish we lived in California," especially this year with the crazy weather.
yeah.
So that was another thing where we're like, you know what, we're not happy here. Let's move to California.
Why
So
not?
we want to move to California. So that's my next step, is getting us out there, and then I'll be looking for positions, hopefully in biotech, because what I did previously was research in an academic setting, which was really interesting. Um, but I've heard so many great things about working in biotech, that a lot of the constraints that are there in the academic research realm are gone. Like, you can basically, like, it's just a different realm, and I want to get into it and see what it's like. So just one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and I'm gonna invite you back in 1 year because maybe then you will be in California with this really fancy biotech job, and we wanna know all about it. So you're gonna come back.
Okay, you might have to give me 2 years, but yes.
I'll take it, 2 years.
I gotta
Awesome.
get
Well,
settled, right? But thank
yeah,
you.
figured it out, but thanks for, sharing your story and all your advice for students. And for everyone out there watching, keep up the great work. Keep submitting all of your questions for the next one in October and your submissions to be part of the raffle. Y'all have an awesome